Okay, please can you confirm that you can see my screen and you can hear me? You can see and you can hear me. Please drop a thumbs up so that we'll continue. All right. So from what we did yesterday, we talked about the while loop and the for loop. I'll just create a simple array. So I'll call it simple, even though that doesn't make sense. And I'll say the first person's name is Joy, the second person's name is Abigail, and the third person's name is Ken. So I have an array here. I can decide to console log everybody's name here if I want, and it's going to print out everybody. Save it and come to the console. Why is it not running? Sorry, this is down here. How do I put it up? I wanted it to be by the side and up, not down. This is why I miss using edge, because most times the more I look, the less I see. Okay, I don't have that time, so we'll just switch. Key, and I can switch it to the side. Want it on this side, not this side. Okay, but this is fine. Save again. Okay, we're back here. So I can decide to log everything and it will show the names of everybody in this array. But I can decide to loop through and console log them one after the other. So instead of printing out everybody at the same time, I can loop through and print them out one after the other. And that would be a for loop. And inside it, I will put console log simple. Now, simple is the array. I'm trying to log the array. And inside here, I will put my conditions. Let A be equal to 0. 0 means start with the first item, which is at index 0. So, and then when A is still less than, for now, we know the value, which is 3. And we can say A shift plus plus. So I am trying to print out everything that is inside the simple array and save it using a loop. So what is going on here is that it is printing the entire thing 4 times. Say your screen is lagging, your voice from my end. Who's experiencing that? Okay. Okay, I think it's from my end. So I'm just going to give me a few minutes to just restart my internet. All right, so I had to restart my router for the sake of those who said my screen is lagging, to confirm that you can see my screen and you can hear my voice at the same time, please drop a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, thank you. So here I have an array and I am trying to log everything inside the array using a for loop. So in the for loop, I just declare the first variable or the variable we're using and set the value to 0. That means start at index 0 and then stop at when the value is still less than 3. Then increment the variable. Whatever value you have, log the array. So if I save this, I have it logging the array 3 times. It's logging the array 3 times, but I don't want it to log the whole items in the array 3 times. I want it one at a time. Now we know that to pick out something from an array, we use square brackets. To pick an item from an array, you use square brackets. So if we're going to use square brackets, should it be square bracket 0 or should it be square bracket 1 or square bracket 2? Because we know these are the item indexes. So if we go with square bracket 0 and save it, it's going to print out joy 3 times. If you go with square bracket 1, it's going to print out Abigail 3 times. Then if you go with square bracket 2, it will print out Ken 3 times. But if you decide to go with this variable, because let me confirm again that it's recording. Yes, it is recording. If we decide to go with this variable, this is more like using one stone to kill 2 birds. The first thing this variable is doing is control the number of times that this loop will run. The second thing is, since we know that the value of A will increase from 0 to 1 and to 2, we can use that to determine what item gets printed out. So if I save it now, I have it printing out Joy when the value is 0, Abigail when the value is 1, and then Ken when the value is 2. So this is how we use a for loop to print out items in an array. You can equally use it to print out every letter of a string. You can equally use it to print out every letter of a string, but we're not going to do that now. So let's continue with this. Now here, in this case, let's assume as a backend developer, you are going to be making a request to maybe Flutterwave or Page, Stack, ExpressPay, any of them, GTBank, any or Access Bank. So if you are making a request to their API, for example, you want to get a list of all transactions by a particular user or a particular merchant. If you are going to be getting a list of all transactions, you may not know what the number here should be. Now, the reason why I added 3 here is because I am actually seeing 3 items. So I know there are 3 items there. But if I'm going to be getting a list of transactions from a particular bank for a user, I will not know how many transactions the user has made. For example, if I make mistake and increase this to 4, you see that I have it printing out undefined because I am creating an index for a value that does not exist yet. So it becomes undefined. But what we can do is whatever this array is, we can call .length on it. We know that .length is a property of an array that gives us the number of items in that array. So even if the items are up to 1,000, 2,000, the moment you call .length on it, it is going to give you the number of items in that array. So instead of specifying a number here, we can call the array and then call.length on it. So if I do this and save it, it is not going to print out undefined. Even if more items get added to the array, it is still going to print out the new items. So this is a professional way of using a for loop, and we're going to be using for loop in our subsequent classes. So I want to believe you understand this. Sorry, just a minute. All right, let's continue. I'm going to comment this out and move to something else. There's what we call conditionals, comparisons, when you are creating or writing logic. I saw a video today, a particular content creator. He said backend is very easy. Backend is very easy, and some persons were lashing out at him, no, backend is the most difficult part. And then he came back to make another video and said, now even though he said backend is easy, it doesn't mean that you should just jump into backend. That the backend is the main app, is the main thing, is the brain. So what we are learning are the simple logics on the backend. Now if you understand the logics, backend is very simple. That's the truth. Once you understand all these simple concepts put together, backend is very simple. What you need to do is just learn how to build just one backend. For example, please, where is A in your index coming from? Cyprian, I want to believe you were not in yesterday's class. The A here is a variable that we are using to control the loop. So we defined it here. Let A be equal to 0. And then we are setting here when A is less than the length of the array. And then here we are increasing the value. All right. So the next thing we want to talk about is conditionals. Conditionals, or you call them if or else statements, ternary operators, comparisons, and so on and so forth. So let's assume one condition in a normal scenario, in a real life scenario. You have a friend, and this your friend, you like to go out, maybe to games, to play any game. But this your friend is living with the mother. And also, there's every possibility that this your friend might be sleeping as at the time you go there, or maybe this your friend has gone to work or something. So these are, you want to do something. What you want to do is play games or go out to play games. But there are certain conditions that must be met. Number one is you need to go to the house and you need to meet your friend there. That is the first condition. The second condition is maybe he's not engaged in something else. He doesn't need to be engaged in something else. Or maybe the mother may not allow him go out. So these are like three conditions. You want something done, but you need to check certain conditions. If you go to the house and your friend is not there, that means the games will not, you're not going to the games. Or if you go to the house and he's engaged in something else, then you're not going to the games. Or you go to the house and the mother doesn't want to let him out, you are also not going to the games. So let's look at one condition. So I'm going to create a variable. I'll still call it A and equal to 10. So conditions are written with if. So I'll start with if. Now this is if, and here I put in the conditions. So inside the bracket, I put in the condition, and inside the curly braces, I put in what I want to do. For example, I will say if A is less than 5, Then I want you to console log for me, welcome. So I want to console log something, but this is only going to happen if the value of A is less than 5. That is the condition. The condition here is that the value of A must be less than 5. So if I save this and check the console log, there is nothing here. I will still save it again and check the console log. There is still nothing here. And the reason behind this is that I set the value of A to be 10, but the condition is that the value of A must be less than 5 for this to run. So if I increase it to 50 and save it, now the value of A should be less than 50 for this to run. If I check the console log, I see it here. So this is a perfect condition. It can always be numbers. It can also be strings. It can also be strings. For example, here I say David. So I can say if A dot includes letter G. So I'm trying to create another condition. The condition, or what I want to do, is I want to log out console log. And the condition is that A, does it include G? If it includes G, then run this. If it doesn't, then it will not run, because this is the only condition for this to run. So if I save it, you see it's not running. The reason why it's not running is because the variable A does not have G inside the value. So I am checking if A includes G for this to run. So if I go ahead and add G here in the value and save it, and if you come back, you'll see it running. I can also try another condition. So I can say if A is double equal to 15. So I am checking for when A is only equal to 15. It has to be equal to 15. That is when this will run. If it is not equal, now this is different from one single equal to. A single equal to is used when you want to assign a value, but the double equal is used for comparisons. You want to compare. What we are doing here is comparing a variable and a value, and also triple equals. But we'll come to triple equals. So if I make mistake and change this to 14 and save it, you see that nothing is showing up here, because the condition is that A has to be equal to 15. So this is an example of conditionals. Any question? Any question? If there is no question, drop a thumbs up so that we continue. Any question? All right, let's proceed. Okay, if you still have a question, drop your question. So there are cases where you want to put a way out. If my condition is not met, I want something else to happen. If my condition is not met, I want something else to happen. For example, if the person is supposed to make payment, only when they make payment, that is when I want to credit their wallet. So if they don't make payment or transfer, their wallet should not be credited. And therefore, the person logs in and comes to the dashboard, but refuse to make payment and is clicking the button to go and see their wallet. What do you want to do? That is else. So in a condition like that, I'll comment this out, and also this one. Let's get something else. I will try using small numbers so that we don't get confused. B is equal to 5. So I can write this if statement here and say if B is greater than 10, then I want to console log morning. Then here I will say else console log afternoon. So now I have an if statement, and I also have the else. So the condition here, these are just two ifs. Just two. If this is met, then run this. Otherwise, do this. So if for any reason, the value of B is not greater than 10, automatically run this one. So this is how if or else statement works. The first thing is the variable we are trying to check. Then the second thing is the condition we are checking for. We have a condition we are checking for. And the else statement is like a fallback. The else statement is like a fallback. If what I want does not happen, then fall back to this one. That's how the else statement works like. So I want to console log morning. This is what I want to do. I want to console log morning. But for that to happen, the value of B has to be greater than 10. If it is not greater than 10, then console log afternoon. So I'll save this and come here. It should say uncaught error required is not defined. Oh, sorry. We're not there yet. So it says afternoon. In the first block of code where we created a binding simple, what if we wrote console log simple without passing in the index A? It is going to print out the entire array. So if you just pass in simple, it's going to print out the entire array for the number of times that loop will run. So that's what will happen. Okay, we have a simple if or else. We have a condition. If the condition is not met, then we'll do something else. So, but this can get so large. It can get so big. If statements can be very, very big, that you need to pay attention to it. So we can have 3 conditions, 2 conditions, 4 conditions, 5 conditions, as many conditions as you want under the same, let's say in the same statement. For example, I have this, so I will remove this. Let's write a longer if or else statement. So I'll come here, start with creating a variable const c is equal to 10. And then here, I want to check for a condition. The first condition will be if c is less than, if c is less than 10, I want to console log, let's say first. We'll keep it at first. I want to console log first. Then here I will say else if. So this is me adding another condition. Else if c is equal to 10, then I want to log something else. Let's say second. And then the fallback, else console log third. So here I have three conditions, or two conditions rather. Two conditions with a fallback. The first condition here is checking for when the value of C is less than 10. So this first will run only when the value of C is less than 10. Now we have another else. An else statement, but with a condition if. So you can have 3 or 4 conditions chained together. You can have 3 or 4 conditions chained together. So we are chaining in 2 conditions. Else, if the value of C is equal to 10, then let the second line run. But if these 2 conditions, none of them is met, automatically it should run this one. Automatically it should run this one. So this is how you can chain on conditions together. Do we have? Okay. Please use the question tab so that I will always see and attend to your questions. All right. This is us adding 2 conditions together. I want to ask if you know this and we can proceed. If you understand this and we can proceed, please drop a thumbs up. Okay. Only one person. If you understand this, please drop a thumbs up so that we continue. All right, thank you. So this is if or else statement. Now, if or else statement is used a lot. It is used a lot, so you should master it. But we're going to master it together. Let's do something else. So I'll say const A is equal to 2. And then another variable const B is equal to 3. So I have 2 variables. I want to introduce you to logical and. Yes, we'll come to that. I'm going to come to explain double equals and triple equals. Now, this is double equal. Double equal means you are comparing whether this is equivalent to this. You're just checking if the value of C is equivalent to 10. That's what you are checking. You are not assigning. If it's a single equal, so there's a difference between a single equals, double equals, and triple equals. So this one is used to assign a value to a variable. So the equal to is used to assign a value to a variable, whereas these two are used for comparison. And we're going to come to learn the difference between the two of them, the double equals and the triple equals. So this single equal to assign a value, which is what I'm doing here. I'm assigning a value. I'm also assigning a value. But once you see double equals, you are comparing if the values are equivalent or the same thing. All right, the logical and, which is used as and the logical or, which is pipe or. If you are writing your JavaScript in JS, I don't know why you'll be doing that because that's for front end. Now, if I have something like this and I say script, I open a script tag and I write these codes here, they are going to work, provided I'm writing it inside a script tag, console log B, and save it. It's going to say B has already been declared. See, B has already been declared there. So I can change the value to T and T. Save it. So it's going to run and console log the value of T. And if you look at it, this is coming from index.html line 18. So this will run, but I don't know why you'd want to write it. Now, the reason why we are using HTML is because we just want to understand a little of HTML. It's not as if we're going to be writing HTML. As backend developers, yes, as backend developers, we'll be writing HTML, but your HTMLs are for emails. They are for emails. I don't know what you mean by what's the best way to view it. It's very simple. Link your JavaScript here, right click and open the live server. That's it. So I'll remove this back and then come back to JavaScript. There is what we call the logical and the logical or. So there are the cases where two conditions have to be true, like two things must be true. Number one, for you to sit in an exam, let's say in a school exam, any school at all, you need to be a registered student. That is the first condition. You need to be a registered student. The second condition is that you must have paid your school fees. So these are two conditions that must be true for something to happen. Now, in this case, we are only checking one condition. If this doesn't work, then let this run. But what if for this to run, two conditions have to be true for only this one to run? I don't mean another line running. You know that this line is different from this line. What if for this line to run, two conditions or three conditions or four conditions or 5, 6, as the case may be, these conditions need to be true for that line to run? So that is where we bring in the logical and the logical or. For example, I'll come here, I'll say if the value of A is less than 5 and the value of B is greater than 2. Console log first. Else console log second. So in this case, we have one condition here. We have another condition here. So these are two conditions that must be true for this to run. When you use and means this first one and this second one must be true. It is compulsory. The two of them must be true. If for any reason this one fails, automatically this one will fail because you are using the logical and. Now, let's save this first. I'll save it. I'll check here. It's printing out first. Why is it printing out first? The value of A is 2. Is 2 less than 5? Yes, 2 is less than 5. The value of B is 3. Is 3 greater than 2? Yes, the value of B, which is 3, is greater than 2. And that is why it is printing out console log first. But if you change this to 20, the value of A now is 20. When you check it against A less than 5, you know that if 20 is not less than 5, automatically you don't even wait for this one. The moment that this one has failed, automatically you don't wait for this, it fails. So in a case where a student needs to, let's say before you see your result, you need to sit for JAMB. Let's say you need to apply for JAMB and then sit and write the exam before your name will come out, maybe in any posting in any university at all. So, but in a case where you didn't even sit for JAMB, like you did not sit for JAMB, then automatically you should not be expecting your name anywhere because you didn't sit for it. Or let's say you didn't even register, but you went there and sat for the exam. You did not register, but you sat for the exam. You shouldn't be expecting your name anywhere because those two conditions must be met. That's what happens when you use and. But if you change it to double pipe, now this is double pipe. This is not forward slash. This is not backward slash. This is pipe. A very straight vertical line like this. When you use this, this is or. Or means only one condition is required. Only one, not the two. For example, you want to apply for maybe to get a bank account open. They will ask you to bring either your driver's license, your electricity bill, your school ID. So they are not saying bring all of them. No, just bring one. Which one do you have? Your voter's card. Which one do you have? So that is what or does. This is or. So if this condition fails, it will wait and check this condition when you are using or. But if it's and that you are using, the moment this condition fails, automatically this one fails. But if you are using or, if this condition fails, it will wait and check for these conditions. Now, if this condition is true, then it will run this. So in our case here, the value of A is 20. 20 is not less than 5. So this condition has failed. But we are using or, so we need to check the second condition. The value of B is 3. Is 3 greater than 2? Yes, 3 is greater than 2. So if I save this, I need to see first in the console log. So if I save it, I saw first. The reason is because when you are using or, only one condition has to be true. But if in any case I change this to 30, now that means the two of them has failed. So it is going to print out, the value of, okay, this is always going to be true because B is still greater than 2. So I need to change it to 1 for both of them to fail. Yeah, now it has failed. So we are checking for when B is greater than 2. So if I make it 30, 30 is still greater than 2, but it has to be 1 or maybe 1.5. In that case, it will fail because 1.5 is not greater than 2. Any question? At this point, if you want to use the mic, please go ahead. Now, it's very important you understand this. So anybody that wants to use the mic, feel free to request and I will give you the mic. And prints the first for C condition, it meets, or the last true T one, it meets. Yeah, that's true. And or print the first true T condition, it meets, or the last for C if all condition are false. Yeah. Okay. You want to say something? Please go ahead. You can unmute your mic and ask your questions. If there is no question, then you can drop a thumbs up so that we continue. A practical application of the if statement. We are going to apply this thing practically. Don't worry, but you need to understand it first. Understand the logic, because in as much as we're going to be applying it, by the time I come to application, I may not be explaining the basics again. Yes, a backend project is not built in one day. The minimum, it depends on the kind of project actually, but if I'm going to be building a full backend project, I'll be asking for, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks to build a very good backend. So we may not be explaining the basics while we are applying it. Really? Are we still on the position of dropping links? Okay, let's continue. Now, there are so many ways that this can be changed. So I'm going to write one condition, just one, and see if you understand it. A is equal to 1, cons B is equal to 2. If you understand this, then we can proceed to something else. 3. So I'll come here and check for when if A is greater. If A is greater than 2, what is his name? Cyprian. Cyprian, go ahead, use the mic. Yes, unmute yourself and go ahead while I write out this.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes, so far I appreciate the way you take us throughout the course. My question is, in the situation whereby you are collecting data and you don't know which one, whether the data is true or not, how are you going to specify it in your condition?
Okay, now most cases you will not know what the data is, but that is why you write your if statement, which is what happens when let's say, for example, if you are going to be printing out pass or failed for people, you take a number and you check that number against a condition. For example, we know that a pass mark is any mark above 40. So if the value is greater than 40, automatically it's a pass mark. So whatever the condition or whatever the value is, it doesn't really matter. What matters is you need to set your standard first. What is the standard? What is the condition for this to happen? Whatever value that is being sent to you, whether from a database or from any backend at all, you are going to check it against your standard. This is my standard. If you miss this standard, then let this happen. If it doesn't meet this standard, let the other one happen. So you can switch. For example, you could actually implement somebody's API and you say that you want to check when the message that is being sent to you is successful. I know some persons see this, but they don't know what it is. But let me just show you what this is. When you are writing, or let's say you're using your bank app always tells you when your transaction is successful and when your transaction failed. And the person, okay, I think my network is lagging behind. All right. Okay. Maybe we are live. So if you can hear me, please. Okay. All right. Thank you. I have a date. Please, I make a logic use that if, else, and the same time to check a condition. So we should use it. I think I've been using it now. This is what, but I'm going to try another one. Now we're going to use these things, but just, it may not make sense to you now. Yes, but just understand it like that. When we are going to apply it, it will make perfect sense. We cannot teach you how to use a database right now. We haven't gotten there. We're going to get there. You will learn how to set up your database and connect your database to your backend. We will do all of that. So I'm still writing this condition. Now, this is the task I want you to do, not for me, but for you. You will tell me which one is going to run.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go
Hello,
ahead.
sir. Please,
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm not asking how to use database. I'm saying maybe you have a document. Let's say, you don't. Can we put? Let's say I have a list of 35 students. Can array take all of them?
Yeah.
Okay, I put all the 35 students in an
Yes.
array.
Yes. Are they?
Okay, but what if I have
Yes.
it in
Yes.
another
Now, the
document?
database.
For example, I have it in another document. How do I connect it to my JS? That is my question.
Okay.
Can you get me?
For now we are doing. Yeah, I get you. For now we are doing. Will I call it? We're doing just the basics. So connecting to JS at this point may not be visible or feasible because of I don't know if this is going to run. I'm just writing any random thing here. So but just look at the conditions that I'm writing. If it makes sense to you, if it doesn't make sense. So I have these conditions. This is just a simple task in the class. What do you think it will print out? When the value of A is 1, the value of B is 2, the value of C is 3, we are checking these first conditions, or we are checking these second conditions, or this third one. Sorry for those who can't connect, we're sorry. So the first line, the third line, the first. So if you have a document and you want to connect it to an array, what you do is just copy and paste, copy the names and put there. But if you want to save it, normally we will be saving it on a database, either as an array or as an object. You'll be saving it on a database, and then that database does not have a limit. The limit there is your budget. So you know that some companies pay millions of naira to manage a database, which is why they don't accept when the backend makes mistakes, because they pay millions for their database only, not even the server, the database. But you can actually start very small, and as the large number of users get larger, you pay more. So when you see or hear companies celebrating that, oh, we have 2 million users, 10 million users, 40 million users, as a backend developer, you know that they are actually spending more. So the number of users you have means you're going to be spending more on your database. And also for the server now has too much traffic, so you'll be spending more. But we're going to come to all of that. But at this moment, if you have a name in a document, just copy the names, put it in an array. But when we come to setting up a database, we can then see how to save all of them to a database. Now, I don't know which one is going to run, but just know that only one will run. Two cannot run at the same time. So I see some people saying first and second. Okay, first and second, maybe the cases are true. I don't know. So, but I'll save it and check. It printed the first one. Why did it print the first one? The condition here is this. It's already grouped. It's already grouped. A is 1, B is 2, 3 is C. Now, these two will be checked, but these two has to be compulsory. So these two can be checked, but these two is compulsory. Why? Because of this and. The same thing here, these two are compulsory because of this and. But these two, one of them is optional because of this or. These two, one is optional because of this or. But here, these two are compulsory because of this and here these two are compulsory because of this and. So that is all I'm going to say for this, and we'll move to something else. So I'm just going to use one simple thing to check it. Let's understand the application. Score is equal to 45. So what we want to do is say if your score is less than 50. If your score is less than 50, we want to console log failed. That's how it happens in a school. Else, if your score is equal to 50 or Okay, no, let's go. Your score is, I want to write it a better way. Your score is greater or equal to 50 and less than 70. I want to console log. Sorry, I forgot to put score here. So here we say, which one is pass? Pass has to be 50 and 60, right? 50 and 60. 50 and 60, we say pass. Else, if your score is greater or equal to 60 and which is compulsory, less than 70, we want to console log very good. So you can break line 74 into 2 lines. Which one is line 74? We can, but we are just saying that this has to be true. The two of them are compulsory. These two conditions are compulsory. Good. So here I forgot to add score. And then else if your score is greater than 70, then we want to say excellent. Sorry, console log excellent. But in any case where we don't even know what your score is, we want to put a default and say please check next time. All right, so these are my conditions. This is just like an exam record or exam board. You are trying to check what the user is going to see based on their score. So looking at this, if my score is 48, what do you think I will see? Failed. If I increase it, say 64, what do you think I would see? Very good. Very good. Very good. Okay, that is also very good to you. All right, since we understand conditions, which it is very important you do, now you will going to be using conditionals a lot. Why? Users behave in different ways. People behave differently. I have seen a lot of people just go to a website and they are clicking button. They will just be clicking the button for absolutely no reason. The button for no reason. Like it happens. People do that. They will click login button even when they are not supposed to. People will be sending names even when that is not what you're asking for. So many things happen. So you use conditionals in so many places. So many. So that being said, there is what we call ternary operators. Ternary operators is the shorthand for if or else statement. So if I want to write if or else statement in a shorthand way, I can say let B. Now I have a value for A, but I don't have a value for B. I want to assign a value to B based on what the value of A is. So I can check what the value of A is. Based on that, I can then decide what the value of B should be. because right now I am not assigning a value to B. I am checking what A is before assigning to B. So with ternary operators, we can say A is A less than 10. So this is me checking, is A less than 10? If A is less than 10, do something. Do something else. Do another thing. So this is ternary operators. You use this question mark to check. Here you can add any condition, greater than or equal to. You can check greater than or equal to, or you can even check double equal to. So the same way we add parameters, you can add them here. You can also double them if you want by adding and another value if that's available. You can also do that, tack on two values. But we're just checking one value. Is the value of A less than 10? If it is, here is the first if statement. So this question mark is an if statement, while this colon is the else statement. So is A less than 10? Do something else. Do another thing. So I can just duplicate this to say I want to, let's have a reference. Here I will say then B is equal to 5. Else B is equal to 20. So if A, if the value of A is less than 10, then the value of B should be 5. Else, the value of B should be 20. If I decide to console log this to print out what the value of B is, B, and then save it, the value of B is 20. Why? Because we are checking for when A is less than 10. Now, A is not less than 10. So we can actually switch this and add equal to. Is A less than 10 or is A equal to 10? So this is less than or equal to. Less than or equal to. So we are checking it for when A is less than or equal to 10. Then the value of B should be 5. Now this is ternary operators. We're going to come to it later when we start writing our backend codes. But for now, do you have any questions? So if I save it, if I save this, I have C20. Okay, less than or equal to 10. Don't worry, we're going to talk about ternary operators. Now let's do something else. Maybe this is going to make it easier. Is A greater than 10? Console log red. Maybe this will be better. Else console log green. So I have this. Ternary operators is just checking. Now, it's not compulsory that you must write ternary operators. Okay, my network is shaking now. Okay. All right. Joshua, please ask your question. We do else with ternary operators. This here is the else. So if the value of A is greater than 10, it is going to console log red. Else, it is going to console log green. So we do else with ternary operators. What's the difference with conditionals? Now, all of them are conditionals. Ternary operators, if or else statements, they are all conditionals. Now, it's not compulsory that you must use one. You should know one. If you know how to write if or else statement and you choose to go with if or else statement, that's entirely up to you. You know how to write ternary operators and you want to go with ternary operators, it's also up to you. But we're going to use all of them. We'll use all of them. Why is your VS Code adding ternary? I think that should be automatic depending on your VS Code. Joshua, ask your question. Are you here? Ask your question. Then we move on to something else. Ask your question. The most important part. The most important part when it comes to JavaScript. Please go ahead, Joshua. Unmute yourself and say something. Hello, Joshua, are you there? You need to unmute yourself and then say something.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Okay, let's continue.
I want to ask a
The
question.
most important part in JavaScript is called functions. Functions are very, very important because functions,
Somebody is speaking, sir. Somebody is speaking.
will I say, is the doing part. Yeah, good evening. Go
Hello,
ahead,
sir.
go ahead.
Okay, I said concerning the array aspect, sir. For
Okay.
simplicity, if you want to, let me say,
Go ahead,
compose,
I'm listening to you.
if you want to compute for a university now, let's say we have 1,000 of students inside a university now, and you want to compute
I thought
an array
Joshua is speaking.
for that particular university now. Are we the one that we input all the thousands of students by ourselves, or when we do the logic, sir? Network issue.
Okay, now you are not going to be typing the names of every student in a university, though. You will not. I think my network is bad. I want to know why. Now, if you can hear me, please drop a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Just to confirm that my network is okay. Why is this slow? Why is this slow? Why is this slow? Why?
Like, are you using your power bank? This side. My phone is using.
All right, sorry for that break. I had to restart my server. So, but confirm that you can hear me now. Okay, that's good now. Thank you. So, for your question, are you going to be the one to write all the names of the students in a particular university? The answer is no. One thing with backend is if you follow the backend classes very well and we pick a project now, because all of us are going to work together on one project. So if you pick a project, one project, and you build just one project from beginning to the end, you automatically know how to build any other project. What do I mean? If we build a hospital management system, building a hospital management system is going to give you insight on how to build real estate, or how to build for e-commerce, or how to build for fintech, or how to build for edutech, any of them. What will happen as a backend developer is you're going to write a function. We want to learn about functions now. You're going to write a function and connect that function to an API, then give that particular API to the front-end developer and tell them this API accepts student details and saves it automatically. So attach this API to your form. So the front-end developer is going to create a form for every student. You come there, you see a form. Now on that form, as you type in your name and send, the function accepts your name and saves it automatically to the database. That's how it works. So you will not be the one writing their names manually. You create a function that does that automatically, which is why I said function is one of the most important part in JavaScript. It's very, very important. So with that answered, I want to believe I answered your question, but if I did not, please feel free to drop a comment and we'll also address it. So welcome to functions. What are functions? Why are functions important? Now let's assume you have a robot. A function is like a robot. You have a robot that does a particular thing for you. For example, you went to China, you asked them to please build a robot for me. What I want this robot to do is to clean shoe. This robot cleans my shoe. If you try using Twilio, SendGrid is not working. Use I don't know why SendGrid is not working, because I use SendGrid for a particular client and it's still working. I use Twilio and it is still working. The clients have not come to me to say mine is not working, but try, what is it called? What are these people called? I can't remember the names now. This particular one we use on CareerEx, this one we use on CareerEx. I can't remember their names. But there are so many you can use. You can use any host. There are so many hosting. You can use I can't remember these guys their name now, but there are so many of them that you can use. And I don't know why you say SendGrid is not working or Twilio is not working for Nigeria. No. Are you talking about the payment? I don't know. Zoho, yes, use Zoho. We use Zoho. So Zoho is still working, so you can use Zoho. All right, let's go with functions. And functions is like a robot. Let's say you go to market or China and say, please build a robot for me. What I want this robot to do is to clean shoe. Then they're going to build this robot. The robot knows how to either polish or clean your shoe, and you bring it to the house. Anytime you call the robot will not answer you, yes, sir. No. The robot knows that the moment they call my name, I am coming to clean shoe. That's it. So once they call the name of that robot, the robot comes to clean shoe. That's what a function is. A function is you create a robot, you package that robot and tell this robot, this is what I want you to always do. And you keep that robot. Now, that robot will not do anything until you call the name. You must call the name. Until you call the name, then it will respond. And once it's responding, it's not coming to ask you, sir, what can I do for you? Or what do you want me to do? No, it is coming to do exactly what it has been programmed for. Either to clean shoe or to do anything. Like the question we just answered, a function that accepts the student's name and saves it on the database. Now, the moment the front end calls that function, it will just accept the name and save it. No question asked. You accept the name and you save it. You accept the name and you save it. The same thing for if the function polish shoe, it will accept the shoe and polish it. So how do we write a function? We start with the function keyword. A function keyword. The following thing is the name of the function, because you are going to be calling the function by a name. So the name of the function, and you put this. So this is how we define a traditional, or we say we declare a traditional function. So this is normal function that comes with EX5. This is how we define a function. You start with the keyword and you give it a name. It can be any name, the name you want that function to be. Now, if it's a function that cleans shoe, you can call it shoe cleaner. If that is what it does, you call it what it does, shoe cleaner. That is the name of the function. And then you put this bracket and curly braces. Curly braces is what it is going to do. For right now, we want it to console log first. So I'll save it. So what this function does is that it is going to console log first every time I call it. It will not ask questions. It will just console log first. So how do you call a function? You write shoe cleaner and then bracket. So with this, I have called this function. If I check here, you should see, okay, this is not running. Why is that? Let me try again. Yeah, now it is running. So we have first here, and I call the function and it's logging first. If I call it again, shoe cleaner, and save, now it is printing out first. If I call it so many times and save, it will print out first so many times. So that is what a function is. You program into the function what it is supposed to do, whatever you want it to do. Now, as a backend developer, you are going to have so many functions doing so many things. So you write what the function is supposed to do, and then you call the function, and the function will do that. For example, let's find a function that calculates the sum or an average, for example. So we can say function sum up, or whatever we want to call it. Now the name is up to you. Sum up. I will say sum up 10 plus 40 plus 50 and save it inside a variable called y. Save it inside the variable called y and then console log the variable y. So this is a function. It will just do a sum of mathematics, 10 plus 40 plus 50, add it together and save it inside the variable called y and then console log the variable y. So if I come here and I call it sum up and save, you see it is printing out 100 because that is what the function is programmed to do. You can take more, like however you want to increase the mathematics is entirely up to you. It will do this and you have this. Now we can also do a function that logs a message. So we can say function log message. Write this, come here, and we say the message const message is equal to backticks. You know what? Let's just say backticks. My name is David Sampson. So here I can then console log message and save it. So if I come down and call log message and save it, it will then log the message. So your function can do anything you want it to do. Anything. So this is how we write function. That this is the basics, but we can take it a step further. Let's say we want to write a function that accepts two numbers and then console log the sum of any two numbers. The function should accept two numbers. Any two numbers. It must not be a particular hard-coded number. Any two numbers. And then calculate the sum of those numbers. For example, I will say function sum. And this will be this, and then I'll say const. So before then, because it's going to be accepting a number, we are going to write here number 1, comma, number 2. What this means is, unlike this one, they are not accepting anything. Here it is not accepting anything. Here it is not accepting anything. So, but for this one, it is accepting two numbers. It's accepting two numbers, and this is where you put that. What this means is that whenever you call this function, you must pass in two numbers because the function is a function that accepts two numbers. So whenever you call the function, you must pass in two numbers. So can a variable inside the function be available or be used in another function or outside the function? Yeah, that happened. That is, but which is why we stop using the var keyword, because it is not scoped. A var keyword will allow that variable to be used by another function, and that is why we don't use var keyword. I think we addressed that earlier, but we're going to come to that later. So we say const result is equal to number 1 plus number 2. Whatever the answer is, console log result. So this is what my function does. My function accepts two numbers and then calculate the sum of the two numbers and adds it here. And then logs whatever is the answer. So if I call this function sum, I have to pass in two numbers. I can pass in 2 and 5. So if I save it, it prints out 7. If I call it again, I must pass in two numbers. I can pass in 35 and 89 and save it. It's going to print out 124. If I call it here again, I need to pass in two numbers, 106 and 789, and save it. It's going to print out this. So this is what a function is. You can build a function that actually accepts an array and loops every student's name in that array. You can actually build a function that accepts the student's score and uses the if or else statement to check if the score is greater than 45 or less than 45, or is greater than 60 or less than 70. And then in that case, you decide what message to console log, whether failed or good or very good or pass or excellent. So that's what a function does. So we can actually try one. Let's try. But in this case now, we have a function that accepts a number. But this is not secure. Because let's say you give this function to a front-end developer and tell the front-end developer this function accepts two numbers. If you give it two numbers, it is going to calculate the sum and send for you. But the user who is using the application decides to pass in only one number. So if the argument is more than 2, we can't pass in more than 2 numbers below. Now, if it accepts 2 numbers and you pass in 3, it is going to pick the first 2. Now, this is it. If you pass in 2 numbers like this first number here is for this first one. So a function is not going to take the second one and assign it to the first one. No. It is going to take the first one and assign it to this first one. Then take the second one and assign to the second one. So if you're passing 3 numbers, this is going to run. Why is it running? Because it will take the first one and assign it here, take the second one and assign it here, then forget about this one because it's not accepting a third variable. But in a case where it's accepting 2 numbers and you pass in only one, users do this and it will print none. None means not a number. So in this case, your function has actually crashed. That is what most users do. They will be testing the application not knowing that what they are doing might actually, not like they are testing it per se, they just sending random things. You know, when you are working as a backend developer, you will discover that users can be very frustrating. They come up with so many things that you even did not reason to that extent. So you're going to see people using the application in different ways. So as a backend, you write a backend to handle every possibility. What do I mean? So I'm going to copy this, come down here, rename it. Let's say add some, whatever the name is, some. But when it is assigning a number or accepting a number, I can add default values. So I am adding default values. It accepts 2 numbers. When you call the function, pass in 2 numbers. But in a case where you don't pass in any number or you pass in only one number, it will not crash. It has a default value to fall back to. So if I call this function sum without a number, it is going to run and print out 3. This function will not crash. It will not crash. So the server will not crash because it has default values to fall back to. If I call it and pass in only one number, it will still not crash, because since it's one number, it will take this one number and assign it to this first one, and then fall back to 2 for this second one, and then calculate 3 plus 2, that is 5. So if you come here, you are 5. If you still come back, and maybe that day you have the mind of God, and you decide to pass in 2 numbers, some users will pass in 2 numbers, it will ignore these default values and use the 2 values that you passed in. So now you have, sorry, what function did I call? I called the wrong function. Change this and save it. So it will ignore the default values and print out 10. But if you say you are overzealous and these functions are having the same name, so I'm mixing it up, 5 plus 5 plus 6. It's going to ignore the default values, pick this first one, assign it here, pick this one, assign it here, and then give you the sum. So this is a function. But functions are not just for calculations. No. I can write a function. Let's say I write a function to call it function, and the name here will be greet me. Whoever me is, greet me is a function that accepts the name of the user. So you set a default value here and you call it user. You accept the user's name and accept the user's score. You set a default value to be 0. And here you put a function. So you say const message is equal to hi, comma, my name is dollar, curly braces name. So in this case, if the person passes in name, if they pass in name, that name will be used here. But if they don't pass a name, the default value for the name will be used here. Comma, my score is dollar curly braces, and you pass in score. So if they pass in a score, the score will be used there. If they don't pass in a score, the default score will be used there. So in that case, your application will not crash. So I'll call greet me and save it without a name and without a value. Okay, I'm not logging the message, so I need to log the message and save it. So now I have, hi, my name is user, my score is 0. If I call this function again and pass in my name as Joy and space passing 60 and save it. So I have, hi, my name is Joy, my score is 60. If I call it again and change this to David Sampson and say 1560 and save it, it says, hi, my name is David Sampson, my score is 60. So you write a function that does a particular thing and you call the function. Now your function can accept a parameter if you want. It can also not accept a parameter if you want, however the case might be. So any question before we continue? Any question? Any question? If there is no question, drop a thumbs up so we continue. I want to believe the functions is actually clear. We understand what the function is. It's pretty clear. You're going to be writing a lot of function. Calling us, in order not to waste time, can you just use the mic? I'll just request for the mic and I'm going to see you top here and give you the mic to ask your question. Yes, please go ahead, ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. My question is, can you have functions inside functions?
Yes. You can have
And
Yeah, go ahead.
How can it be applied, sir? I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. You can have a function inside a function. We're coming to that part. What it is called, we call it a callback. A callback is a function inside a function. Let's assume, as a backend developer, your job, you want to write a function that will fund the user's wallet. But before you fund their wallet, you need to first find that user details on the database. But before you go ahead to find that user's detail on the database, you need to be sure that they have made payment, either by transfer or deposit or something. So you're having three functions. Let's forget about what functions are now. You're having three functionalities to build. One functionality is increase the value of their wallet, add the number that they paid to the wallet balance. The second function is find the users. So find the user, find their wallet. The second function is confirm that they have made payment, that payment is true. So that's three functions. Now, you call the first function, you add the second function inside the first function, and then you add the third function inside the second function. So that is how we nest functions, and we call it callback. You can use an if statement to do this. Depending on what is true, then call this function. If the condition is not true, don't call the function. You can also use an if statement, or you can use a callback. Put the function directly inside the function. It happens. So there are so many ways to do it. We're going to come to that. But yes, you can have a function inside a function, and it's called a callback. So what do you mean by server crash? Yeah, server crash means server is not working. Maybe people are not able to log in. Maybe people are not whenever people are not able to do what they want to do. And I don't know how to explain it now. Server can crash when the server stops running. As a backend developer, your server is supposed to be running 24/7 because you don't know who is accessing your application. They may be accessing it in the midnight. So your server needs to be running at midnight at any point in time. Is it safe to conclude that function is undefined until a value passed in? Why calling the keyword? Oluwatobi, I don't know what you mean by undefined, but we're going to look at that later. Regarding the sum function we created, how can we make it accept any number of arguments and add them together rather than just two? You just continue increasing the values of arguments. So here we have 2 arguments. If you want it to accept 10 arguments, add all of them there. If you want it to accept 20 arguments, add all of them there. Or better still, you add all of them inside an object. We're going to come to that. Better still, you add all the arguments inside an object. You know, these are keys and values. This is the key and the value. This is the key and the value. So you can add all of them inside an object and pass in that object inside the function. So inside the function, you can be picking out the keys from that object. So as many variables as you want. But before we spend all of our time, let me introduce you to arrow functions. We're going to be using a lot of functions. And what's different between parameters and argument? The two of them are the same thing. There is no difference. You can either choose to call it parameters, you can choose to call them arguments, you can choose to call them variables, whatever you want. Please, what is the difference between a function and a module? And how can I use a function in a different project? A function, of course, we've defined it, is a robot that does something for you. But a function becomes a module when you can package it and use it anywhere. So for example, I have an index file. This is my index.js. Let's say I have another file, I create it and I call it about.js. Now, if the function I wrote here, I can export it and use it inside here, it becomes a module. So that is what the module is, and you're going to do that. So a function will do whatever you build it to do, but it becomes a module when you can export it and use it elsewhere. And what's the difference? How can I use a function in different projects? In different projects, I doubt if you can do that. But if you can, you need to convert them and make them a smaller modules that you can use. I don't know if that was going to answer your question. But we're going to come to that. Can you explain return keyword exactly? We're going to come to return. Yeah. Okay, so is it safe to conclude that function is undefined until a value passed in while calling the keyword? I'm still not getting the question actually, but let's just do something here. Now, these functions that we've written, these ones are the normal functions that come with arrow functions. Somebody mentioned something. He said hoisted. Now, this word hoisted comes out in a lot of interviews and exams. They keep asking you, what is hoisting? Why don't we use the variable keyword? Why don't we use function declarations? And so on and so forth. So when you hear about hoisting, depending on how they ask the question, hoisting. What is hoisting in JavaScript? Hoisting simply means that in JavaScript or coding generally, the browser or whatever interpreter or compiler it is, it starts from the top, start reading the code down to the last thing. But in JavaScript, when you define variables, when you define functions, there are times where JavaScript is going to take all your functions and put them at the top of your file. So if the browser is reading your code, it is going to see all your functions first. It is going to see all your variables first before reading any other thing. So those functions and those variables are being hoisted. What it means is it's placing them above the file. Now, literally, those files, you're going to still see them where you wrote them. They are still where they are. But in the eyes of the browser is seeing those functions first. And that is why most times, let's say I want to demo with this. I am going to call this function here and save it. Come to the browser. You see that this function is running. But I called the function first before I defined it. So by default, this is going to throw an error because if the browser is reading the code from the top to the bottom, it reads line 34 first. When it gets to line 34, it doesn't know what greet me is. It hasn't seen what greet me is. But automatically, it is actually running something here. Why? Because it is for the browser, these functions are hoisted. They are already at the top of the file. So before the browser reaches line 34, it has already seen this function. So that is what hoisting is. But some people, including me, argue that that is wrong. There's a time when I was arguing, of course, that is right. The function should see all the browser should see all the function first. Why delay? But that's not the case. Because most times when you call a function, before actually declaring the function, you may not actually know what to add, or you may not add the complete stuff, or you don't even know why you were writing the function in the first place. So it is better to define the function. Define what it will do. Define everything before you call the function. So, but for hoisting means that you can actually call a function first before you define it, and it will run. It will not break because the browser is going to see the functions and the variables first before reading every other thing. So that is hoisting in JavaScript. So anyhow the question comes, I want to believe my definition actually did justice to that. So arrow functions. Arrow functions were created, or it came with ES6. ES6 didn't get the hoisting explanation from when you say the browser places all function variable. access them beforehand because the network was breaking. It's fine. That's why we have a recording. You can always see the recording. Let's just read arrow function, even if it's for just 1 minute. It's very important to learn arrow function. Arrow functions are defined the same way we define any variable. So you define a variable name the same way you call any variable. That is how we call or we define arrow function. What the difference is, instead of adding a string or adding a number or adding a boolean, you add three things: the bracket, the fat arrow, and the curly braces. So these three things, whenever you see them together, not differently, together, that is an arrow function. Whenever you see the two of them or the three of them together, that is an arrow function. So in case you want to figure out when something is an arrow function, you will see the bracket, the fat arrow, and curly braces. Three of them together makes up an arrow function. So I can open this up and write console log first and then call the name of this first here and save it. So if I check, it's calling first. I can also write an arrow function that accepts a variable. So I can say cons accept variable is equal to bracket num, and the default value should be 0, and then what you should do is console log for me num plus 10. Whatever the value is that is passed in, so if I call accept variable, I must pass in a value. If I don't pass in a value, it's going to fall back to the default value. So pass in 45 and save this. So arrow functions are not hoisted, but the traditional functions are hoisted. Variables declared with const and let are not hoisted, but variables declared with var are hoisted. Now I think that made sense. So there are so many ways to use a function. Now we're going to, in our next class, we've actually entered deeper into JavaScript, and I want to believe everybody is following. Now if you're not following, no problem. You can always watch the video. If you still don't understand, before the class starts, the moment we just come live, ask your question. We'll treat it before we start whatever we have for the day. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the little we have or we can do for today. We're not going to learn everything at the same time, but this is what I would say: whatever it is I have done, please make sure you know the little I have done, because there is a lot to do. But if you don't even know the one I did, how then would you know the one that is to be done? Everything clear for this side? All right, well done. So backend is sweet. It's very sweet. It's very simple. For those who have written front end before, by the time you learn backend, you are going to discover that it's very sweet. As a matter of fact, I started with front end. I love front end so much. Like, let's not use love. I liked front end so much, but the moment I just tapped back end, I fell in love with back end. So there were times people say backend is difficult, No, backend is not difficult. Backend is difficult when you are not in class or you don't have a good tutor to teach you. It becomes difficult. So an arrow function, whenever you see the bracket, the fat arrow, and curly braces, that is an arrow function. You declare an arrow function the same way you declare any variable. So, but the moment the value is fat bracket, fat arrow. Now, this fat arrow, some people will be asking, how did you get this fat arrow? This is bracket. Fat arrow simply means you write equal to and then the greater than sign. So this equal to and greater than sign together makes the fat arrow. So you know when we are doing comparisons, we had to write greater than or equal to, and then let this or equal to. And so you see that the two of them are not the same with this one. This here is what we are using, but the equal to comes first here. So this equal to and the greater than sign together makes the fat arrow. So, but for this one, these are for comparison. This is less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, but this cannot be equal to or greater than. No, this is fat arrow. So this is what an arrow function is. Then inside here, you can do whatever that you can do in the normal function. So this is what arrow function is. And I love arrow functions a lot because it is easier to use arrow functions as a callback. We're going to come to all of that, but let's understand what functions are and what and how to use functions. So your assignment is going to come after today or maybe tomorrow, and so case maybe. So any question before we end today's class? Any question? Starting, where did we start from again? We did a little of loops, a for loop, and then we went to conditionals, the if or else statement, and the if or else statement we treated logical and or logical or, and then we came back to ternary operators, and then we entered the functions. So can we create a function that can accept any number of keys and perform tasks without us defining the number of keys it should be accepting? Just like when we use the len, when the number, the thing is this, a key is a variable. So if you don't know the name of the variable, how would you use the variable? For example, you don't know whether the front end is calling it first name and last name, or whether they are calling it full name. So how would you use the key? But there are cases where you don't even need to know what the keys are. But if you want to use them, using means using them to do something. So using them to do something means you have to call the name, you have to write the name. But if you're not using it to do anything, you just want to show the name, or you just want to pick it like that and send it. Because most times, let's say you are building a backend for a payment platform, but you are not the one processing the payment. Maybe the bank is processing the payment, and the person on your front-end application is making a payment, but you, the backend, you are serving as a mediator or intermediary, like in the middleman. What you do is accept what your front end is sending and send it to the bank. The bank will process it and send you a response. You take the response like that and send it back to the front end. So in that case, you don't need to know what the keys are. You're just picking it up like that and sending it to the front end like that. The front end is sending it to you. You can pick it like that and send it to the bank without checking what the keys are. So that can be done. But if you are the one to use it, you need to know what the keys are. Okay, is there a distinct difference between an arrow function and a callback function? An arrow function will just define it. Now, a callback function is a function inside a function. So anytime you hear a function inside a function, that is a callback function. Whereas arrow functions are functions that came with ES6. You need to put equal to. There has to be equal to. So, but you can define a function like this, but there has to be equal to. The value of the variable needs to be these three things. That is how it becomes an arrow function. Yes, we are going to talk about triple equals. Sorry, I forgot about that. In our next class, we're going to treat that. So as I noticed, exactly, arrow functions look cleaner than the normal function. That is why if you notice, I had to make sure I teach arrow function, because I can't remember. Most times, I don't write these functions like this most times, but I use it. But arrow functions are cleaner to me and they are faster to write. So that is why I like arrow function. But there are people who still like the normal function and there are people who like arrow functions. So, but I had to teach arrow functions so that you too can choose between, because if I give you assignment, just know that functions are going to come out in your assignment. You either choose to either write it with a normal function or write it with an arrow function, except I explicitly say write it with this type of function. Okay, but arrow functions are cleaner, so you can choose when to use any one you want. There's no in there. All right, any other question before we call it today? If there is no question, it's fine. Normal function and smaller is also fine. So in the absence of any question, if there is no other question, please drop a thumbs up. Now, I want you to actually understand why you are writing a function. You are writing a function because you want it to do a particular thing. So function does something for you. All right, see you guys next week. Bye. Yes, we're going to treat async, await, and all of that. We're going to treat all of it, but with time. All right, guys.